Hey, good morning, everyone. It's been a few weeks since we've done Any Given Monday, and I'm excited to be back. This is LJ, and we have a special guest today. So let me bring our guest to the stage, and we can kick this off, this conversation. I first am remiss, I would like to say thank you, everyone, for joining. Today, we're joined by Jamil, and he is the CEO and CTO of Unified Ground. And our conversation and our meeting was very serendipitous. I was at the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce's Energy Summit, and we were
Yeah.
introduced by Keith of Block Power. And what I found fascinating and exciting is, as a fellow technologist, you talked about your pathway to CEO, but you also talked about like your experiences and just moving from industry to industry, but really always following your heart and following what you're most passionate about. And I think one of the things that we're doing here at any team is helping people identify their transferable skills and really looking at it as a way to move into other markets, but then become educated about things they care about and just keep following that. But also obviously getting skilled and getting some knowledge and education. And so our passion right now and what we're looking at is golf always. How do you build your skills through golf? But the transferable skills needed to enter into the green economy, to understand sustainable energy, to understand the impact it has on our community. And even for the developers that have projects in place or homes or they have buildings that they own, the fact that they have to do something and involve the community. So I've said a lot. I think, Jamil, I think it's time to first tell us how you started your career in tech.
Yes.
You started in media at that. Tell us how, the pathway in the most the easiest way for people to understand how
Yeah,
you went
sure.
from there to here.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me on, LJ. So yeah, I'll give you the quick version of my journey. I did start off as it had a couple winding roads there, but I was an engineer, a computer engineer, and started out in new media, working at internet companies. I actually took a break from that, and I actually worked in behind the scenes, actually in entertainment media. I worked at HBO behind the scenes as as a production assistant on the record with Bob Costas, and then made my way back to using my engineering skills mostly back in media, and I ended up working at Major League Baseball Advanced Media for a time, and for HBO for a time on their player and their HBO Go. So was well deep into media, from both sides, and using the transferable skills from being both, behind the camera and actual production, and then, behind the magic that brought live streaming for things like HBO Go. I think what there was always something nagging me to do something that was more mission driven. My dad was a civil rights lawyer for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and then a federal judge in New York for 25 years. And yeah, I wanted to do something with mission. I wanted to do something that involved community and service. And so through a winding road, I ended up as the first CTO of Block Power. And Keith was that common connection that we had, and got like an amazing lesson of everything that's going on and around the fight in climate change, how important it is for us to change to make our buildings more energy efficient, how far behind, how much the lack of attention on our communities and the buildings our communities had made them less affordable, less energy efficient, a lot more energy burden. And all the different technology solutions that there are out there. So I was able to apply those technology skills that I had to a new fight, which I've been very excited to continue to be involved in. So from there, I became CTO of another company, first CTO of another company, Bright Power. And I think we discussed this when we were having our conversations. It was one of those career moments too, where I decided to stay in the executive suite as opposed to, I could have gone back to like software development somewhere and be like, okay, I clearly, leading teams is what I've been doing for decades, so I can go back to leading a team somewhere. But I wanted to stay mission driven, and I wanted to stay in the room where the strategic decisions were happening. And so made the decision to do that. Great company, Bright Power, also mission driven, based in New York, but has like they have software that helps analyze buildings at a portfolio scale, figure out like how to make them more energy efficient, and real impactful work too. We had a big contract with Fannie Mae to do all the measure and verification for every green loan in the country, for multifamily buildings. So
But let's pause there. Let's pause
yeah,
there because I think I mean, there's so much to digest. And but there's so many gems of wisdom in that, right? It's also being able to identify, well, what are the skills that I'm bringing to the table? But as a technologist, as a person that knows how to solve the problems or that is always seeking a new opportunity to solve a problem using technology, it must have been difficult for you to choose to stay in the room versus be boots on the ground in the middle of the technology. What, aside from, wanting to be a decision maker or be at the table and be able to influence change, what are some of the things that came up for you personally around just that decision or the other?
I think being able to be in the place. I mean, you said a lot of that. Being in the room where things are happening, being where able to have impact. I think that um, you, it's hard to understate the impact it has to see people of color in leadership. And I know that I had that effect not just on technologists, but on other people. They would see who is in leadership, and that would be a pivotal part of the decision of like whether is this the right kind of place that I want to join. Um, I think, yeah, it was always important. Like one of the things that I think is so important is mentorship and sponsorship, and I think that what I love about being a leader is the ability to find where people's passions are and help them grow from those, to be able to shape and I knew just being in the technology limited my options to be able to do that, and that um, being, I was gonna go, I thought about getting an MBA, but I was like, I can get these business skills. I think more and more now as I'm running my own business, I'm like, I got a lot of business skills without that MBA just by being in the room and
Yeah.
understand and seeing all the mechanics of what goes into run a business, do a raise. I was in the, they weren't all technology decisions, but that decision to be in the room has improved that skill set and allowed me to make this transition to being a CEO.
I love that. And I think for anyone listening, it is a difficult decision. Like, you have this passion for technology, but you're moving from a doer to like the strategist, the person that ensures that everything gets done. And, I'd like to acknowledge all my summer youth employment interns who are listening right now, because you are the next generation we're looking at is how do we as the doing and help empower you so that you can build the skills to be in those rooms. And the real conversation is, what are some of the skills technically that you need, but then what are the other things that you don't know yet until you get into the room and then you decide, wow, I'm standing next to someone that has done multi-million-dollar fundraisers or billion-dollar fundraisers, or I'm looking at technology that can transform how we consume energy for the future, or how we're able to sustain this planet. So talk to me about the pivot into or the jump into entrepreneurship for yourself, because as an entrepreneur, I will say it is no easy feat. I often want to fire myself sometimes and then hire myself back. I never know who's showing up for work sometimes. But I get fully dressed up to remind myself that you are a CEO and you need to show up. But talk to us about
Yeah.
the uncertain jump off of the pier.
Yes, I made the jump, and a lot of the reason for the jump was I think I gained the skills to believe that I could do it. And the main thing I was looking at was I love the work that I did at Blackbauer and Brightbauer, or doing mission-driven companies. I saw two things. I saw a gap in energy projects and the ability to engage community. Um, and I saw companies that wanted to do real estate companies that wanted to do right by the community, but sometimes did not have the uh, know-how to actually connect the dots, which is in my brain. I was like, well, this is kind of a technology data problem, at least where I can bring my skill to the problem. I collaborate with people who do other parts of, who understand community organizing and do other things, but I understand data. And I understand that part of the issue is just being able to connect the dots. So Unified Ground, we have a technology project, Greenbridge, that helps connect the dots better, so that utility companies, green project developers, green tech companies can develop more data-driven community engagement strategies, which is now a necessity. Like if you're trying to go for DOE funding, or you're looking at nicer, you need to have a commitment. Well, you should want to anyway, because we cannot have a just transition without an equitable society. But it's a challenge. These are people that are focused mainly on this huge problem that we have here to save the planet, and to change our energy grid to support that. At the same time, how do we bring community in so we do not leave people behind in that transition, and lift people up?
So let's pause there, because one, people listening may not know any of the acronyms that you shared, so you might have to break every single one of them down.
Okay.
Let's start with NYSERDA, then
Okay.
we'll go to DOE, so that people understand what you mean when you say DOE, because for everyone listening, he does not mean Department of Education, no pun intended, even though we're going to educate everyone.
Yes.
So we'll talk about DOE, and then we're going to talk about the dots, because if you're not familiar with this market, if you're not familiar with the challenges, people don't know the data that you're talking about and why your solution is so, it's forward thinking, in the sense that you don't know the problem that we're seeing in a marketplace, and you don't know how to solve it, because everyone doesn't have a hands-on approach or see like it firsthand the way you have. So
Yeah.
let's start with NYSERDA, let's move to DOE, and then let's talk about, well, what are these data dots? So everyone listening can now be just a little bit more informed about what's happening in the market, because while we want this utopian society to save climate, the reality is it's all about money. So if a developer can't justify the cost of this conversion, and there is no reason to do it, they're not going to do it. And if you can't tell me how it's going to be more profitable, either we're trading energy stocks or we're doing some kind of financial computations and creating some type of structured vehicle to trade this,
Absolutely.
I don't see why I should do it. So you have to talk about the money, because while people want to feel good about community, the reality is we are in a space where people need to see what their return on investment is. So I've said a lot. Start where you feel most interested.
Yeah, so NYSERDA is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. So one of the main bodies and driving bodies in the state of New York around the energy transition. And so if you're working, you're right on, it's about the money. And DOE is the Department of Energy. And so about 2 years ago, landmark legislation passed by the Biden administration, the Inflation Reduction Act, which has more to do about the environment, and a lot of money, billions of dollars, to help spark the energy transition. And that's money going to developers, utilities, to states to then give to other people. So there's a trail of money that's now available to help, get more wind projects done, get more solar projects done. As a requirement, at the federal level, there's something called Justice 40. 40% of funds need to go to communities that were previously underserved. In New York State, we have a similar climate law that says 35% of the funds that need to go to communities that were previously underserved. And so these companies, they're not doing it because they're not doing it purely out of love for community. They're doing it, as a necessity to access this landmark investment in the environment. They need to understand how to make measurable impact in the community, understand the communities that have been underserved in the past, and engage with them. And then that is, it's not an easy problem, and part is about the data points around why they're underserved, data points around who are the people that you should be interacting with to build trusted relationships. Where are the small businesses that are ready to be involved in, say, the offshore wind business or solar business? And so a lot of my platform is about putting together those data points so that the businesses can access those funds from NYSERDA, from the Department of Energy, and which at the end of the day, makes that solar plus battery project actually cheaper to do, by interacting in a more strategic way with the community.
Okay, so thank you for that. I would be remiss if
Acronyms.
because there's more to this. There's more. So I had a conversation with a developer, and I said, "Well, why wouldn't you? You're doing an entire community rebuild. So it's a community of color. They're rebuilding. They're trying to get the community involved." And I asked, "Well, what are your thoughts around the solar projects and building, aside from the LEED certifications and the things that are basic, but really building like self-sufficient grids and just the technologies, like putting them in place now while you're building instead of needing to go back and spend money and retrofit it?" And he said, "Well, the technology's not there yet. I can't prove that I can run an entire building off of solar." And so my question for you is, what are you seeing in the market as you're trying to justify these investments in communities of color where they don't really want to put like, what would be the best way to say it? Experimental technology that you can't prove the return. Like, I need to know that by spending $1 million on this panel / whatever, I'm going to save this many dollars. How are you starting to leverage data or even your tools to have those conversations in community to create equity?
Yeah. So I will say that the technology moves fast. I would say not as experimental. Like, the numbers do work out. I think that as I've dived into it, there are numerous problems there's production, in the solar, but our grid has to change. If you want to look at a specific example, cities have made commitments to go to renewable energies to reduce carbon, but you can see places in our grid which don't work. A recent example would be in Houston when the hurricane hit there, and the grid went out in various places. That's a solution where in a situation where other technologies around potentially battery storage or stuff could have had a positive effect. The grid just being able to better support what goes on. I mean, people didn't know where I don't even know. I feel they still be out of power right now in Houston, but they were looking. I heard a story about someone saying that how people were looking, because it was also 100 something degrees, and so looking for places where there's power to stay cool. So we have to find solutions. It's not a question of like, is it good enough right now? We have to find solutions. We have to try solutions. What someone said to me is they were looking for like where there was a Whataburger with the lights on. That's how you could figure out what neighborhoods still had energy. So a little bit dystopia. Just to go to the point that we're at a very critical point. We have to be trying things. We have to upgrade the grid. We have to find new ways to create energy, distribute energy, support communities. It's not we have to be looking forward, because climate change, climate emergency, there's a lot of talk about the language we use around it. Whatever it is, the climate's changing. And if we're going to be resilient, if our communities are going to be resilient, we need to change. We need to change the way we build, and we need to be trying new things.
Okay, so I'm going to put a pin in that one, because us having the conversation around the moral obligation of developers. Yeah, so I'll just pause on that.
Yes.
For all the developers, no offense to you or anything in that space or case, but it's always about how fast can I flip this and get my money back and then make a profit. So we'll have to come back to that. But for right now, for communities and in individuals in community-based organizations, for individuals that are just going to their local bodega and looking for their next job or next opportunity, what can this look like, and what should an individual that is coming out of college or just going to college, or may decide that they don't want to go to college, what kind of information can we share with communities that can be more insightful, for them to be able to make better decisions or more informed decisions?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that point up. I think it's important, whether going to college or not. There's a whole class of jobs around to support the green economy, green collar jobs. There's a bunch of resources out there. The city just put out a green action plan, which like is an example of like the different types of jobs that can be green jobs. There are lots of programs out there to learn and to be involved in, to learn about, because the focus, there are many people focused right now on developing career sustaining jobs in this, not just that in this industry. And I would say that is an opportunity people should be exploring. If you're a young person, high school, college, that there are a lot of options around the green economy, because there's going to have to be a lot of work done, and to be aware of those. And then a lot of community organizations. I don't directly work with those programs, but I do work with a lot of the organizations that support those programs. And there are a lot of great community-based organizations that are doing work specifically, all those organizations that have always been out there to help with economic development, help with getting people jobs. They all have now folks that are focused on green jobs.
Yes. And so from your time at Bright Power to Block Power to now Unified Ground, are you seeing a trend in some of the skills that are needed to thrive in this market, or even be able to participate? Because everyone's not going to be an electrical engineer, everyone's not going to be an electrician, everyone's not a mechanical engineer,
Yeah.
everyone is not a chief technology officer. For those that don't know what CTO means, just sharing, just reminding you, because I forgot my interns are listening, so they may not know all of the acronyms.
Yeah. I think so I will mention two things. I think that two examples. One place that's been interesting is this great organization, Stacks and Jewels, that I've had the pleasure of working with, and they've been teaching folks how to work in building automation, and that is, all the buildings of the world have inner systems that help them like understand when to turn on the air conditioning, the lights, and all those systems. And that's something that they've been able to get folks with and transfer their skills from other industries to learn how to do that. And there's a deep need, huge need to, buildings produce most of the carbon, and and the ability to automate buildings is very important. And the other area for everyone out there is I'm right now involved in an effort to try to better use artificial intelligence, specifically focused with community groups who are fighting climate change. That's very specific, but we have new tools around and generative AI, and there's buzzwords around it, and it's not always easy to figure out. And so right now I'm working on an effort to make that more accessible. We should be able to. There's a ton of ethical problems about artificial intelligence and the way that it's set up and the gatekeepers that exist. But there's a great opportunity which anybody can access. And I think it's most important for people who are looking for transferable skills, new skills. The ability to apply the different parts of artificial intelligence can give you a huge leg up to be in places you couldn't imagine. I can't imagine that you could be right now. So I think that is an incredible opportunity, and I think that it is important for us to be able to have a way for folks that are transferring skills, folks that are entering the market, to be able to use artificial intelligence for like mission-oriented work, be that in green technology or other mission-oriented work.
So, we have a few more minutes. We only have like 5 minutes left, but I think one of the things I'd like to hear more about with Unified Ground, when you think about impact and you think about the work that you're doing, what are some of the things that what are some of the things that you have been excited about, like the proud moments? And then what are some of the things you're looking forward to, things that you're excited about that are on the horizon?
Yeah. Proud moments. I love what I'm doing. It is great to be able to go. I'm working with some folks in St. Louis on some climate work, and um, it just was inspiring to just to be a part of getting people thinking in the right way. They were able to get some funding through some of the work that some community groups there to get some funding through the work that we did, and it's just great to be able to be a part. Like that's why I got involved in this, is to be to make sure that money gets to make sure that funding opportunity gets to folks that are already doing the work and already there. So really proud about that, and excited about that work. And as I look to the future, like I'm excited about, I'm involved in another opportunity here that's training a bunch of minority and women businesses to be in the offshore wind program. So I'm still learning, and it's about a future opportunity. And I hope to, for that program, I'm excited to get involved in offshore wind, but also to bring a lot of other businesses involved in the opportunities in offshore wind and on the waterfront here in New York. And I'm excited about that. There's so much opportunity. It's in a space where it's just a new space. It's going to produce a lot of energy here in New York, and to get folks to get people engaged in a new space is exciting. So those are my two things.
Okay. And I think, you have to define a few things. So can you explain offshore wind and how it's relevant for New York? Because you don't think of New York as a windy place. So there's some assumptions that people are making. It's not like we're on the fields of Scotland, which is actually the background, because I played in Scotland. So technically our background is when I was in Scotland. And when I was there, you could see there were wind farms there. And that was almost maybe 7 years ago that I was there.
Yeah.
And they had wind farms even then, just kind of in the water. You can see them off in the distance. And Scotland is extremely windy. And so the ball is going everywhere but where you want it to go. And I spent most of I don't think I ever saw a fairway in Scotland, but that's not the point. The point is, in New York, there are these wind farms coming, and I don't think people understand, like, what is a wind farm? How is that possible? And why does that matter for a person sitting in the middle of Harlem, New York City?
Yeah. I'll give the shortest example of that. So right now, there's actually lots of wind there out where they're going to build these gigantic wind farms out in New York Harbor. It's going to, and offshore wind, so it's out there. And when you're out in the middle of the ocean, or we're enough out there, there's actually plenty of wind to have continuous energy created. And the potential, and these offshore wind towers are a generation beyond some of the ones you were seeing in Scotland. They're like as tall as skyscrapers. I think the wingspan is like 400 feet, 400 something plus feet. So huge. And when they're going to build these gigantic farms of wind out there, eventually it will produce a quarter of the power here in New York. That's the impact. It will have a significant real impact on the cost, the cleanliness, and the energy that we see here in New York, and hopefully and ultimately should the shutdown of some of the more unhealthy power plants that are around Black and brown neighborhoods in New York, peaker plants. But that's the promise. You should care about it. It's a gigantic opportunity, a gigantic amount of energy that is going to be created off the shore of New York. Come here, create jobs as the energy comes here, and for that whole industry. So that is offshore wind.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I know we're at time, but I know you are working on multiple projects and there are different ways to engage with you. But this is a timely moment to talk about your podcast and just kind of share, how do people so they don't necessarily know that you host this podcast and your father was a judge, but tell us a little bit about the podcast and how to, because obviously people, we are multifaceted in all of our abilities. So tell us about it.
Yes, briefly, I do a podcast with my father called Ellis Conversations, where we talk about race, law, and history. A lot of it's based on classes he taught at CUNY Law. but very accessible. And right now, we're talking about a very important topic in a very divisive political atmosphere about the importance of voting, and not about the. We're not telling people who to vote. We're talking about like the why to vote, why it's important. Because I see, you know, part of this divisive rhetoric around voting and on voting laws is people either are trying to appeal to get your vote or to prevent you from voting. So why are they trying to prevent you from vote? What does your right to vote? Why vote? And so I am proud of and would love if folks would listen to our podcast, Alice Conversations, which you can find on iTunes and many other places. On a very important topic because we all, as citizens, I think this is going to be, it's a very important year. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. I would be remiss if I didn't share my last few promotions. One, let's pull it up. Next Friday, we are hosting a golf outing. I am a co-founding board member of Finer Life Golf. And so one of the things we do is introduce golf to kids in the inner city, ages 9 to 13. And this fundraiser is so that we can provide free programming to teach kids about golf, but use it to connect them to STEM concepts. And energy, obviously, is our theme for this year, going into 24-25 school year. How do you introduce energy concepts through golf, being able to use that as a tool and give that programming to kids for free? And that is usually a feeder into the First Tee program and other programs. And then I'll share our next episode is going to be on August 5th. We'll have a special guest there. And I will say thank you for watching. Bye, Jamil. Thank you. This is our conversation. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.